racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance resolution. They vote against it. Liberal dictatorships that have not accepted the loss of their colonies and want to put obstacles to the development of multipolar world. This blossoming garden, surrounded allegedly by wild jungle, formulated by Brussels, is just reincarnation aimed at this racial superiority of the Nazi nightmare. The European Union that is smeared in brown spots. It's militarizing like the Third Reich used to do it, preparing for the Third World War, not concealing it and calling our country an enemy. It's obvious they have not learned the lessons of history. Russia had to start the special military operation in order not to allow to turn Ukraine into a platform for neo-Nazi military operations. The man-hating ideology will be uprooted, and the aims of our special military operation will be achieved. It's our duty before the winners in the great patriotic war. Now I would like to tell you about the Russian diplomats, the Russian foreign ministry, daily and for many years, literally, working in historical issues and brings the true international law into foreign relations, forged by the heroes of the Great Patriotic War. I would like to mention the preparations for the coming holiday, Victory Day, the 9th of May, abroad. In the accounts by Foreign Ministry in social media, we continue, and we are doing that on a daily basis, to tell you about the history of the Great Patriotic War, the feat of the Red Army soldiers. It's the colossal role played by the Soviet Union in the liberation of Europe and the entire world from this man-hating ideology. Just the product of Western European civilization, the Nazi plague. In Russian, English, and other languages, materials about the key stages of the Great Patriotic War are published. About the heroes, based on the archive evidence, we tell you about the crimes of the Nazis on occupied territories, about genocide of Soviet people conducted by them. We do that not only for our competitors, but also for and together with the peoples of our brother republics and now sovereign states. We do not divide this information. These documents, these archive materials are not ours. They are our common evidence, because the feat of the Soviet people, it is the common feat. In many countries, Russian diplomats and competitors hold memorable events. They do not allow to keep silent about the truth about the victory. And the pseudo-historical truth they are trying to promote somewhere now. There have been the Immortal Regiment marches in many cities. Thousands of people participated in them. Despite provocation in a number of states of the so-called collective West, this event has already been held in more than 30 countries. In some cities, it has been the first time since a pause caused by the pandemics and the manifestations of Russophobia. In Busan, for example, in South Korea, it was the first Immortal Regiment procession since 2019. They try to somehow conceal historical fakes. They just express their hatred in many ways. Just imagine, diplomats just equal the Soviet Union. from where their great-grandfathers originated. They equally to the Third Reich. It's just treason towards their ancestors, or it's just the descendants of Nazis. They cannot be called diplomats, because diplomacy should be based on international law and historical facts. It just can cause disgust, sincere disgust. As the head of the Kiev Janta, Zelensky, his fathers, great-grandfathers, they fought for the Soviet Union, for our common motherland. They fought against Hitlerites, Hitlerite occupants and criminals. What would their ancestors say now? Looking into their eyes, just looking at their descendants for their personal benefits, just denigrating our common past, and denigrating our common history. So this published material, they're just deceitful, and arguments are presented by us against them, and where the monuments to liberators are still standing, and where the cemeteries of Soviet soldiers have not still been destroyed, they have memorable events have been held. We honored our heroes in more than 40 countries with the direct participation of Russian diplomats. In memory of the victory, tons of trees have been planted and even small alleys have been created. In India, Indonesia, Israel, Bulgaria, Portugal, and many other countries, the school children and children of our competitors participated in memorable events like Windows of Victory and the Candle of Memory. There was also this Songs of Victory initiative. There were concerts held in many countries where our beloved wartime songs were performed. Songs literally banned in Ukraine now, but it's the music that links the generations. It's the sincere songs coming from the heart, have been written by real soldiers. It's the truth about the good and the evil, about the fate of the people, about the human fates of our mothers, grandmothers. The descendants of the Nazis are trying just to distort that, to erase this memory. Their efforts are not successful, I would like to say. We will not allow that in Paris, in Vienna, in Tirana, the Turecki choir and soprano performed those songs, and local audience, they just enjoyed those songs, and our competitors, and the Turecki choir concert has been broadcast. It's the second performance of the Turecki choir there. The songs are posted on the internet. They are shared for someone you know, some foreign friends, and Russia also participates in this initiative. We publish comments on the songs of the Great Patriotic War. We also post videos for those songs, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia supports this initiative. And now our president, we now launch in the Telegram the digital program in Russian and English, the so-called rounds with records of 20 most well-known victory songs. Please listen to them, please share them. Such audio visual messages. People from all over the world demonstrate a colossal interest towards the 80th anniversary of the victory and the historical truth. You can study that in the Foreign Ministry accounts. The information is uploaded on a daily basis, and there will be links in the text of the briefing. Please follow us. You can see a lot of very interesting events held by our foreign missions. It's not only the events in which Russian diplomats participate in the context of the 80th anniversary of the victory. There is also analytical work connected with this memorable date. It's been a report prepared on the shadow of Nazism covering Europe again. It has been it's about the glorification of Nazism. It's spreading the several different forms of Nazism. In jubilation 80 years ago, people thought that Nazism is finished. Nazism was finished, but such a high price, the highest price has been paid for this fight against Nazism. But it was just the head of this ominous iceberg. The entire Nazism needed to be destroyed, but actually, as we see now, it was just its visual part, the part of the iceberg above the water. But its roots, its nurturing ground, and the part under the water, it has been preserved. And now Nazism is raising its head, mostly in Europe, in Western Europe. Our report is based on information of human rights organizations, intergovernmental organizations. We study in detail the actions of the so-called collective West to support the Nazi Kiev regime and specific NATO countries, mostly Baltic states, Poland and some other countries, motivated by anti-Russia sentiments, having lost the remains of some historical memory, they just continue to destroy the Soviet heritage on their territory and intensify the work to falsify history on the history of the Second World War. Some representatives of political science, even historians, they just play along, unfortunately, because history has not taught them anything. The man-hating ideology is not just glorification of this horrible Nazism ideology. It's just creating the basis for its propagation. Our country has suffered enormous losses as a result of the Second World War, has destroyed Nazi representatives in Europe. It will never allow to forget the lessons of the past, to distort the historical truth, including the liberation of Eastern Europe and Central Europe countries. The liberation that has been the result of common efforts by anti-Hitler coalition. I appeal to journalists, political scientists, historians, please study this report. It's available in Russian and English. Share your assessments, maybe some materials. Possibly we will use them in the development of the next report. Now some events with the participation of Foreign Ministry. There has been an exhibition without the right to forget. This exhibition has been prepared on the order of the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, within the framework of Victory Day celebration. It's about the crimes of the Nazis, their collaborators against civilians, the Russian archives, the Russian Ministry of Culture, Russian Historical Museum, and Historical Society participated, with the participation of Defense Ministry, Foreign Ministry, Federal Security Service, Federal Guard Service, Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, and Foreign Minister Lavrov has greeted the participants in the exhibition. More than 1,200 exhibits have been presented in its collection. Thematical blocks have been formed with the most important museum and memorial items that vividly reflect the decisive contribution of the multinational Soviet people in the victory over Nazi Germany, and tell about the feat, the great feat, and the victims by the Soviet people during the liberation of the world from Nazis.
Special attention is given to the role of the Russian diplomacy in the victory. There's materials of the archive of the foreign policy of the Russian Federation. There's a draft address of the then People's Commissar for Foreign Affairs of the USSR, Vyacheslav Molotov, to the Soviet people on the day one of the Great Patriotic War. Central place belongs to the original act on capitulation, enshrining the ultimate defeat of the Nazi Germany. This exhibition gives the opportunity to the guests to see the memorabilia of those years, to feel the pulse of the military era, and to realize the greatness of the people victoire. It will be open until August 25th. And on the street that is close to our ministry, we'll host a photo exhibition dedicated to the Soviet diplomacy during the Great Patriotic War. Guests will be able to see the documents and photos reflecting important stages of work of the People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs of the USSR during the years of the war. These materials show the activities of our ministry to establish anti-Hitler coalition. This exhibition will give an opportunity to people and guests of Moscow to see how the activities of Russian diplomats contributed to the defeat of Nazism. The exhibition was prepared by the Department of State Protocol and Historical and Documentary Department of the Ministry, with the support of the Department of Culture of the City of Moscow. All the materials were given by the Archives of Foreign Politics of the Russian Federation. Now, about the modern fight with Nazism, about the Ukrainian crisis. At midnight, from May 7th to 8th, the 72-year truce on the 80th anniversary of the Great Victory, declared by Russian President Vladimir Putin on April 28th, come into effect. I'll remind you, on May 3rd, Zelensky publicly refused to support these initiatives, saying that this initiative is not serious, but it's more serious to kill their own people, isn't it, Zelensky? The Ukrainian army did not stop firing during Easter. He violated the ceasefire regime about 5,000 times. In March, April, they violated a 30-day moratorium on energy strikes 136 times. Moratorium is not serious enough, it seems. Zelensky doesn't have any sacred anymore. He abused the memory of his own grandfather, holder of 2 orders of the Red Star, Semyon Zelensky. Now the leader of the Kiev regime abuses the living veterans, those veterans who lived until the 80th anniversary of the victory. and who want to participate in the celebrations on the Victory Day on April 29th and May the 3rd. Zelensky de facto threatened to commit terror attacks during the parade in Moscow. He said that he cannot guarantee security to those who is going to come to Moscow. When he realized that yet again he made a fool of himself, Zelensky, in a manner typical of him, tried to put the blame on who? On Russia, of course, who ostensibly is interested, according to Zelensky, to accuse the Kiev regime of it. But wait a minute, it was the Kiev regime that after every strike on the civilian facility, after every killings, say that it's their responsibility. So who puts the blame on anyone? The government in Ukraine always confirmed their participation in the implementation of these terror attacks. But isn't it us who put any blame on the Kiev regime? No, it's the Kiev regime who confirmed in the killings of Russian journalists and striking on civilian infrastructure and attempts to destroy of the Crimean Bridge. There's a saying, a thief can't hide his guilty feeling. But in case of Zelensky, this feeling is really huge. On April 29th, the real designs of the neo-Nazi regime was aired by the Secretary of the Committee of the Verkhovna Rada on National Security, Roman Kostenko, during the air. He said that Ukraine has capabilities to simply strike on the Russian parade. But this is the direct words of those who holds the power in Kiev. It's their direct quote. In case there is an order, such operation can be designed. The leader of the SBU, Vasily Maluk, said that the Zelensky want to destroy the Crimean Bridge. The international terrorists, look what they turned the Victory Day into. As a sign of Nazi solidarity, the EU countries want to have an informal meeting of foreign ministers on May the 9th. One can think that it's not that bad, but where? In Lvov. The choice of the city, with rampant aggressive Ukrainian nationalism, whose authorities fight against tombs of Soviet soldiers, is quite symbolic. The participants is also important. They want to make a certain impression on the European Russophobes and inspire them to support the Zelensky regime. The main aim of the meeting is to try and stop the celebrations in Russian, but they understand that these plans are absurd. Now about the decommunization in Ukraine. The veterans of the Great Patriotic War who live in Ukraine are recommended. I would like to say this with, I need some courage to say this out loud. They recommend the veterans to hide the awards, those very awards for the victory, for fighting, for heroic deeds during the Great Patriotic War. on the inner side of their jackets, in order not to confuse the sensitive looks of the locals. They don't say that they're Russophobes, but it is clear that they are. What is this? How can we call this? This is a conscious abuse. This is an attempt to degrade people. These guidelines were worked out in this institution of the National Memory of Ukraine. They said that the Soviet ordnance and medals should be worn in the correct way. De facto, it is prohibited. But after writing history, the Kiev demands not to keep the heroes in the shadow. They want to destroy themselves, not to show themselves, not to have the courage to show those words and orders. It is clear that memory of those who saved the world from the Nazism makes them fear. On May the 8th, May the 8th marks the 60 years since a directive was adopted about the title, the Hero City. This title was given for to Soviet cities where people showed mass heroism and courage during the Great Patriotic War. Today in Ukraine, neo-Nazis abuse important sites, but they cannot destroy the memory about the people who courageously fought in the war, who destroyed the Hitler Germany in Stalingrad and in other battles. Today, Russia yet again fights the Nazism in Ukraine. There's no doubt that we will do this. Kiev and Odessa will yet again be called hero cities. I once went to Mexico. It was a private visit and happened quite a lot of time ago. And not far from Mexico, and we went there to see some local museums. The guides said we should go to the suburbs and to see the pyramids. And this the Teotihuacan complex was indeed very good, and it's in the heart of Mexico. And we couldn't believe it when we came there. They're huge. They make up a whole complex, and it turns out that they were discovered not long ago, about 20 years ago. And I asked myself how such things can happen, that huge things that can be compared to modern skyscrapers can be forgotten. And people who didn't go anywhere from the region can forget about them. It's been about 15, 16 years since then, and now I do understand how humanity can forget whole cities and pages of their history, and the example of Ukraine. In our eyes, the history of hero cities are being forgotten, but I'm sure that in future they will be reopened. But we'll do even more. We will prevent to the forgetting of the history of these cities. On May the 2nd, 2014, 11 years ago, Ukrainian Nazis killed in the trade union's house in Odessa dozens of innocent people who did not agree to the seizure of power in Kiev. Do you remember back then that the anti-people junta and their sponsors with power destroyed the legitimacy in Ukraine? People in Odessa protested. They decided, with the cost of their own lives, to say no to this. 48 people lost their lives back then. It didn't happen 80 years ago. It happened 11 years ago. It's the newest history. It's the modern history. We all remember this. But not everyone remembers this. 48 people were burned alive. It happened in 2014, not in 2014, and not 2014 before our era. It is 2014 of our era. The first part of the 21st century, 48 people were burned alive. Indeed. Every time we say that with pain we remember those tragic events. And every time we are going to talk that those guilty of this mass killing weren't punished. The Kiev regime, despite new information about that crime, continue to cover up those who were guilty. But the main question goes not to them, not to the Kiev regime, whether it is those who threw out the legitimate representatives of the Ukraine from their cabinet, Yatsenyuk and others. It's not the question to Poroshenko, who came after that and did everything not to investigate this crime. It's not the question to Zelensky, but he, although he promised to bring order into this matter. But it is a question to those who year after year said that human rights are sacred, that they are the basis of the development of the economy, finance, the culture, who looked at everything through human rights, who did not forget any cases that where they saw the violation of human rights. But where are those human rights institutions now? And those representatives of the Western public society? Now we know that they only received money from the USAID agency. Where were you back then, 11 years ago? You did not demand the investigation, not simply of the killing of people, but to sacrificing these people to neo-Nazism. The Kiev regime continues the terror against the Russian region, against civilians. In the night on April 28th, Ukrainian Nazis continued started the drone attack against civilian facilities. The Russian air defense systems put down 102 out of 115 drones. A civilian was killed, a woman was wounded. From April the 29th through May 6th, at least 4 people were wounded. On May the 4th, the Strela factory was damaged in the village of Suzemka. On May the 1st, the Ukrainian soldiers with drones made a terror attack on the market in the village of Veloshki.
8 people died and 20 were injured. On 24th of April, the UAV strike in the village of Mokroy Orlovka in the Belgorod region resulted in the death of a local chair of the Electoral Commission, Svetlana Timoshenko, and the injury of her sister. The drone attacks, as you know, when I was in school, back in school and at the university, I read poetry dedicated to the Great Patriotic War. Valia Valentina. Now, this is what is happening right now that we have to deal with, our country has to deal with. But this complete lawlessness and cynicism of the West, they will have to pay for that. Someone will pay with, as it should be, in accordance with the corresponding laws, and we will be talking about this in more detail. And some in the West perhaps would have to answer a bit later, but they'll have to pay with seeing a generation growing of those who don't care about the ancestry and the history. A generation of those who will be not able to distinguish truth from lies, who will not be able to protect their own countries, they will not be able to respect their own countries, and will have no love for their countries. As a result of this UV attacks against a civilian sector, a car and a bus in other villages from April 25 to 4th of May, 4 civilians were killed and 15 were injured. On April 24th, the Banderites deliberately targeted the holy site in the Belgorod region with the UAV wooden temple complex New Jerusalem in the village of Sukharevo. They used the UAVs to prevent the Emercom officers and Russian servicemen and local volunteers, to bar them from trying to extinguish the flame. You know that there have been a lot of artistic pieces and documentaries about the Second World War, about atrocities committed, and that's the same thing that Nazis have been committing. On April 27, the UAVs from Ukraine struck a school in the village of Peshchanoe and a butter factory, an oil factory in the village of Sloboda in the Kiev regime. The school was set on fire and 1 person was injured. On 30th of April, the UAVs from the AFU attacked a civilian district and a building of a kindergarten. On the 4th and 5th of May, the UAVs resulted in deaths of 2 people and injuries of 5 people. On 27th of April in Gorlovka, the shelling with the use of large caliber artillery resulted in the death of a civilian and 6 people were injured. And on 29th of April, 17 people were injured, including a 4-month-old child and 5 internal ministry officers. And 9th of 2nd May, the UAV attacks against the city of Rilsk resulted in injuries of 3 people and further injuries of another 3. In the Novorossiysk and Krasnodar Krai, the strikes resulted in the injuries of 5 people, including 2 children. On the 3rd of May, the Ukrainian terrorists tried to strike the Crimean infrastructure with missiles using 8 Storm Shadow missiles and 3 Neptune anti-ship missiles. On the Black Sea, 33 crewless unmanned boats were used in an attack. All those boats have been destroyed by the Russian armed forces, and everything will result in a punishment. Russian courts continue to sentence Ukrainian neo-Nazis and mercenaries for their war crimes and other atrocities. Andrei Zhurba and Anatoly Marmaza, the AFU militants, received 16 years in prison each. They mined roads and prevented the evacuation of peaceful population from the Kursk region. They have been in absentia sentences in regards to foreign mercenaries from Azerbaijan, Belgium, and Sweden. Gassar Analogly Mamedov, Maxim Roger Genry Barat, and Tobias Enquist. They have been sentenced to 14 years in prison each. All 3 have been declared, international search has been declared for all 3. A 9-year sentence was issued to the Colombian mercenary Miguel Ángel Montilla Cardenas, who was captured by Russian forces in 2024. He accepted the blame. The Ukrainian Nazis are still continuing to identify themselves with their ideological predecessors from the Third Reich. Of course, there's proof of that. On the 26th of April, the militants of the Karpatskaya Sech Battalion published an invitation to the celebration on the occasion of the creation of the detachment, depicting the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, and other Hitlerites. In Lvov, there have been manifestations in the framework of the yearly glorification of the SS Galician division. One of the posters featured the photographs of two German Nazis in the period of the Second World War. One of the pictures was taken during the Kiev offensive in 1941, and second in the Ardennes in the Battle of the Bulge in 1944. We see the the telling example of glorification of the German Nazis and the collaborators from the Ukrainian rebel army, which has been deemed extremist in the Russian Federation. Those people have been capable of killing hundreds of thousands innocent Ukrainians, Russians, Poles, Jews, and other ethnicities. The modern Banderites, in their hatred and in the cruelty, have surpassed their ancestors and their idols. But those are not just separate problems. Those are the problems that, in concert, are one large global problem. We see new testaments of overwhelming corruption, the all echelons of the Kiev regime. There's been a scandal that more than 20 officers of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine pointed out that in their declaration on incomes that they had huge proceeds in cryptocurrencies on their electronic wallets, the majority of which have been discovered as non-existent. Perhaps they have not been just trying to be more honest than they actually are, but the Ukrainian journalists think that these are the clumsy attempts to legalize the stolen proceeds, primarily from among the money that has been supplied by the West to Ukraine. And this has all been going under the pretext of fighting corruption. And against this backdrop, the government of Ukraine refused to increase paychecks, to increase salaries to teachers, justifying it by the lack of possibility to send budgetary funds, which have been all sent for security and defense. Which kind of defense are we talking about when we see Zelensky regime killing their own citizens? The Kiev regime, for the sake of its own enrichment, is trying to extort money from Ukrainians, deeming them to poverty. And some of them have been running abroad, where, if lucky, they will be able to leave the country, but then they will be immediately prosecuted by the representative of the Kiev regime, and so on and so forth. And this all is part of the overarching plot where we see the Russian language cancelled in Ukraine. They've been boasting that there are almost no children in school, and perhaps this will be a point where there will be no children at school at all in Ukraine. They've been boasting that there have been no children in Ukraine studying Russian language. Currently, they say that around 345 people have been studying Russian and 109 people have been studying it as a foreign language. Such data was presented by an ombudsman on the protection of the state language, Taras Kremlin, on the 1st of May. According to him, there have been around 100,000 children in 2021 studying Russian language, and soon he boasted that there wouldn't be a single one. Just I'm curious if someone will be interested in studying Russian language, and for this, for the sake of statistic, would he be physically exterminated to keep the statistic beautiful in the eyes of the Kiev regime? This, of course, will be mentioned later. And this achievement is being appropriated by this language ombudsman, who has been openly claiming to seek re-election after July, when his mandate runs out. In the conditions when the Russophobia in Ukraine is the main basis of state policy and has been cultivated in Ukrainian society, we see unusual characters emerging, such as Ukrainian actor Bogdan Benyuk, who in a live broadcast called for hitting children for speaking Russian. That he told that you could hit the minors if they speak Russian, and you could hit, and when it comes to seniors, you could simply hit them in the head with a bottle. Well, an artist, perhaps as a person emerging from a cultural background, should bring culture to the masses, but on the other hand, he's demonstrating his anti-culture, his lack of education, and he just demonstrates what is the real culture in Ukraine, which has been transformed and twisted under the state propaganda. This is a telling example of this brainwashing that we see when a person born and raised in the USSR, who was cast in the Soviet and Russian films, has been transformed under the influence of propaganda. Bogdan Benyuk perhaps is sticking to the principle, money doesn't smell. Perhaps in Ukraine money truly doesn't smell. Some people in Ukraine, for example, Zelensky, truly do smell something in Ukraine. The actor was also asked what about his own son, what was he doing, and he answered that he wasn't really in a hurry to give the duty to the motherland. Remember the case of Kuleba? He said the same, that he gave all to Ukraine, but at the time he was living in Central Europe and he had a new home. We see all those photos of Ukrainian officials and former Ukrainian officials enjoying the lavish lifestyle, and the citizens of Ukraine are trying to seek answers, so why he abandoned them. And all those who left don't care about them. The members of the ruling regime are acting precisely in that manner. They are sending people to the slaughter, and they are hiding their own children in universities or abroad, or are just or inventing legends about them. Another comedian is very famous in Ukraine. He also was cast in Russian films. He was friends with colleagues in Russia. He supported the Russian language. And for the sake of money, he betrayed the memory of his veteran grandfather. He usurped the authority in Ukraine and turned Ukraine into an Nazi quasi-state, and is ready to sacrifice millions of Ukrainians for his own safety. His name is Vladimir Zelensky. The enumerated facts confirm the relevance of the special operation and denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine, and the elimination of threats emanating from territory, and as was stated by our leadership, all those goals will be achieved. And the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Yermak, took another attempt to rewrite history. He tried to rewrite the history of the Second World War, and what he told us was completely puzzling. He published materials. Can't really believe that a person could come up with that, but it is nevertheless true that 16% of the Soviet division allegedly were formed and staffed by Ukrainians, and hundreds of thousands of those people were storming Berlin in 1945. After the war, the territory of Ukraine, during the war, Ukraine was a basis for the Russian war effort, and that the Soviet Union wouldn't be able to survive without Lend-Lease, without fuel, without logistics and armor. Lists for the T-34 tanks were manufactured in the United States, and the half of Russian bread were supplied from abroad. That is according to the nonsense spewed by Yermak. And according to his opinion, the refusal of Britain to capitulate upset the plans of Hitler to concentrate his efforts against the Soviet Union. In 1941 and 1942, 40% of the German forces were forced to be retained in the West. That's the type of history, according to the Kiev regime, was told to us by Mr. Yermak. And he concludes by saying that without the Washington, there wouldn't be resources. Without the United States, there wouldn't be an army. And without Britain, Hitler would not be distracted in the West. And according to him, that Russian contribution to the victory is a propaganda piece to institute a post-war hegemony of Moscow. And the real history of the Second World War is the history of resistance, where the contribution of Ukraine was written in blood. This is a new word in historical revisionism and a veritable novel rich with the Nazi revanchism spirit. A very powerful and important fake piece and desecration of historical memory. Just look how they are cringing from at the very sight of the 9th May celebrations. They can't stand even the mentioning of the great victory holiday celebration. And we see that even the self-denunciation. And Mr. Yermak doubted the decisive contribution of the Soviet people to the victory against fascism. His conniving desire to forget about the heroic deeds of the hundreds of thousands of Soviet fighters is baffling. He claims that 60% of Soviet division were made up from Ukrainians. I don't know where he took that from. The archive data that shows that Ukrainian nationals constituted less than a quarter of the complement of this Red Army. This is not good or bad. This is just we see that they're trying to twist the information, but it is not about the numbers. It's important to say that they fought shoulder to shoulder with other nationals of the Soviet Union, among different nationalities, different ethnicities: Russians, Belarusians, Kazakhs, Georgians, Armenians, Uzbeks. And they fought not for an independent Ukraine, but for the common motherland, the Soviet Union, for their home as part of a single country. Yermak claims that Lend-Lease had a saving role. Of course, the aid was very important, but it pales in comparison with the power of the Russian industry. 76% of all casualties sustained by the Wehrmacht were sustained in the Eastern Front. Almost all operations of the Soviet army were conducted with the use of equipment manufactured in the Urals, in other factories that have been moved to the hinterland, and everything that has been created by the heroic deeds of the Soviet people. I will once again remind everyone that perhaps I thought everyone knew about that, but I'm being surprised to the fact that the Lend-Lease wasn't free. And the debt for Lend-Lease, and it's important for the next time when Yermak or other similar to him will be able to would be spewing this nonsense. It's important that we see that the debt was paid, and it wasn't paid until 2006, and Ukraine didn't take part in paying out the debt. And seemingly they should have been, because despite the fact that they have refused to participate in negotiations regarding Russia inheriting the state debt, the foreign debt of the Soviet Union. This completely discredits the only position expressed in the Bankovaya. The modern Ukraine is also experiencing heavy debt, and the debt will be laid upon the shoulders of the future generations of Ukrainians. the difference is that then the Lend-Lease helped destroy the common enemy, the Nazis, the fascists, and today this aid that will be paid for by the future generations of Ukrainians, they will be paying for that throughout their whole lives. They will be paying for that aid. And this aid is coming to their own detriment in the future. And the thesis about the half of Soviet bread manufactured abroad is also ludicrous. In the most daunting times during the war, the Volga region, the Siberia regions provided all the grain for the front. The shipments abroad consisted around 10 or 15% of the total amount of grain circulating in the Russian Federation. Regarding the armor for the Soviet tanks, and the manufacturing of this type of steel was developed in the factories in the Urals and brought from Kharkov. And the same thing was mentioned by the Prime Minister Churchill and President Roosevelt regarding the USSR's contribution. We understand why Yermak is doing what he's doing. He needs to show his type of loyalty to the West, then show it in a way that doesn't degrade the memory of the President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill, as if contradicting their own statements.
I would quote those statements in 1943, President Roosevelt, in his letter to Stalin, he wrote, "I congratulate you on the brilliant victory of your troops near Stalingrad." And the commanders, frontline commanders, men and women who have supported the worked at plants in the field, they just united, not in order to just forge the glory of arms, but also to with their entire energy to reach the defeat of our common enemy. End of quote. Further, UK Prime Minister Winston Churchill, in his letter to Stalin, noted the future generations will recognize their duty towards the Red Army as we are doing that. They have done a lot for us to survive that and to live to see those achievements. Can this quote by Churchill be made now at Downing Street at Foreign Office for British media who are so proud of their British education, for them to quote the testimonies of UK Prime Minister Winston Churchill? Now the agonizing Zelensky regime is experiencing one failure after another. It's just in favor of the West, just contributing something to them. It will not influence our Victory Day celebrations and attempts just to attribute the victory to someone else, to someone uniquely, to the British, to the Americans. It's just an offense against all the memory of all the peoples of the Soviet Union who have paid the highest price in order to liberate Europe from Nazism. Actually, the UN could react to that, but Dujarric, UN representative, he just made another notorious comment during his briefing on the Ukrainian issue. He said that a number of Ukrainian 175 civilians were killed during attacks on Ukrainian cities. Actually, there were questions about the sources of this information. Dujarric was at first embarrassed by that, and he said that the information is provided by local Ukrainian authorities. I would like to say, Sharman, we're just so tired of that. When you are asked at the UN Secretariat about the specific confirmed facts, you say that you have not seen, you have not heard this information. Do not distribute that. But when it is anti-Russia information, you just find some data for that, and it's discrediting of our armed forces. And the UN Secretariat should deal with verified data from reliable sources of information. We're speaking that blatantly. We're just addressing the Secretary General representatives. It's just the Ministry of Defense regular reports. They say that the strikes on the 23rd, 24th of April were done only against military sites, missile and tank sites. It's just not the first time of horrible insinuations regarding the Ukrainian crisis. The UN Secretary General used to fight against such insinuations. The efforts, they just need to be better employed. Now they just support the most absurd accusations against our country. Take Bucha, for example. The same people, they said they visited the site, they heard, they saw everything. They just mourned, but it's unclear who they mourned. We have asked tens of times, requested the UN Secretariat to provide the lists of those allegedly killed there. Nothing has been provided. We have addressed Guterres and talked personally, but there were no clarifications about the, as they say, tragic events in Bucha. There are no lists, no information, no names, no photos, no information at all. The UN officials just have a contradictory approach to that issue. They did not condemn the barbarian attack against the Kursk region, not just humiliation of people, but torture against civilians by the Ukrainian armed forces and by that Bankova gang. What they committed in the Kursk region. No information, no comments at all. Despite questions by journalists about regular shellings of Russian civilian citizens with the use of drones, Ukrainian drones. Even those cases where the Kiev regime accepted responsibility, there were no comments by the UN Secretary General or someone else. They just call upon restraint and call up independent investigations, but when it's about Western countries, they find some data, of course false data, false numbers, but those violations of international humanitarian law, I would say unprecedented. To all the independent experts and observers, such a line based on double standards, it just causes disgust. The UN officials should adhere to equal positions. And in these conditions, the Secretariat, it can hardly be regarded as an honest broker in the settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. We call upon them to stop this engaged policy and to be neutral in its position. And to come back to the implementation of their direct duties within their functional scope. Now the Javier Milei administration has provided access to the digitalized archives on hiding of the Third Reich representatives in Argentina. We will, of course, provide the link in the text of the today briefing. The classified marking has been lifted from this file long ago, but it could be studied in specialized archive premises. But now it has been shared. This data has been shared by Rosenthal Center based in the US, and now this data has been made public. Collected from 1950 to 1980 by national security services of Nazi criminals who were hiding in Argentina. How many of them were there? How do you think? Maybe tens of them, maybe 100 of them who could just hide there somehow. Not less than 10,000 people. It's a good question. How could they just move there? There is the Holocaust architect Adolf Eichmann, who lived under a pseudonym of Ricardo Clemente in Buenos Aires up to 1960, and by the Mossad special operation he was taken from the country and executed in Israel. Josef Mengele, death edge of Auschwitz. He was hiding in Vicente Lopez, the outskirts of the capital. Erich Pripke participated in mass executions for more than 50 years. He lived in Argentina. Leon Buche, Klaus Barbie, and the leader of Croatian Ustašes, Ante Pavelic. It's only notorious, the most notorious names, but it's not less than 10,000 people. It's just what we know today. Maybe there were more of them. Russia welcomes the publishing of such documents, and we call upon other countries to follow suit and to make public the cases of Nazi collaborators hiding over their territories. We would like to underline that these crimes have no statute of limitations, so they were hiding there and they were hidden in those countries. So that's the Observatory on Teaching History in Europe. On the eve of the 80th anniversary of victory in the Great Patriotic War, they just started this frenzy, continued it, and published that report. They did not actually publish the data about Nazis who were hiding on the territory of Western Europe, for example in Switzerland or in Northern Europe. Instead of publishing the data about their movement from the European continent, in particular to America, this Observatory on History Teaching in Europe published the report on actions in 2024. This instrument has been created under the auspices of the Council of Europe, of the enlarged partial agreement, and I have called it an instrument because it has no relation to any historical scientific community. They underline the input of the observatory in debunking the alleged Russian disinformation campaigns to assess the past of Ukraine, according to the opinion of those pseudo-experts.
Все хорошо.
The Kiev regime, everything is good in its perception of the Second World War. It meets with no objection in Strasbourg, the Ukrainian point of view. They just publish pictures with Nazis in the invitations to event. Just the Observatory on History Teaching ignores that. Their banners, they're just totally in compliance with the Nazi banners. But the observatory just doesn't notice that. It just turns a blind eye to the Nazi marches and actions against those who do not agree on the territories controlled by Zelensky and his gangs. Approaches were promoted that were politicized and hostile towards our country. It's from 5 to 6 December 24, the annual conference of this observatory in Strasbourg in 2024, and we were accused of being politicized and confrontational. What this phrase means, it's impossible to understand that. Actually, its purpose was to balance the history teaching and the communication between professionals, but it has turned into an instrument, you see, necessary for further degradation of conscience, self-conscience of the peoples of Europe. It's just a mouthpiece for openly anti-Russian and revisionist approaches. It just causes indignation. This so-called observatory, they are trying to reformat history through that. It's a means of influencing the public conscience, strengthening Russophobic cliches and xenophobia. We think that fighting the historical truth is unacceptable. We will react and we will cooperate with all those who are open for dialogue, who treats the historical memory with care and attention. In Warsaw, there has been the 10th summit of the Three Seas initiative. It's just some event that is not very important, but the destructive policy towards Russia and inefficiency of European institutes and the growing rates of militarization at the expense of civilians is just new, more perspective models of regional interaction. But the Three Seas initiative, it's not. It just promotes the crisis. It does not provide any ways to overcome the crisis. And the joint declaration that is filled with the talking points that have been on many occasions voiced supporting the Kiev regime and offensive statements against Russia of various kinds. The text is so phonetically, blatantly Russophobic that one of the participants in those Three Seas initiatives, namely Hungary, deemed important, necessary to adopt a separate declaration to distance itself from these cliches. I would like to warn my colleagues against playing with the Kiev regime and to share with the Three Seas initiative countries their analytical best practices in protection of energy and transport infrastructure and to spread it to Baltic and Adriatic. It's just looks like some news from some mad people. It just requires some well-balanced approach. And what can Ukraine and its current state offer to that? Just to implement the Kiev experience, and Russia is open to the development of mutually beneficial interaction with all the constructive partners, also in energy, and the implementation of any politicized infrastructure projects bypassing our country just lacks perspective. And about this NATO expansion, since the 28th of April in Georgia, there are command post exercises in Georgia with the participation of NATO. 17 member countries participate, including Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Thus, the alliance continues its policy to involve the republics of the South Caucasus into their influence. As a rule, such formats are used by NATO to impose to the regional actors. They impose their standards. They create conditions to reshape the defense base. No one should harbor any illusions. And the actions of the NATO aim not at strengthening security, but to create the zone of instability and tensions. We hope that the above-mentioned republics will be critical in terms of participation in such events. One more important topic, our foreign ministry together with Association of Small Indigenous Peoples of the North Siberia and Far East of the Russian Federation, prepared a book, Regulations of the Northern Peoples. This book includes documents and materials endorsed by federal agencies about organizational, finance, and economic and other aspects of activities of societies of small indigenous peoples, including them obtaining consultative status at the ECOSOS and other materials that contribute to the more active participation in Russian NGOs in specialized international forums. The main aim of the book is to make the legal norms as easy as possible and to make the interaction of indigenous peoples with the authorities as easy as possible. The publication, this book adds up to the book published in June 2023, the Code of Northern Peoples. The e-version of the book is published on our website. The link will be available in the text of the briefing. Now about the humanitarian acts. In response to the request of our Iranian friend, the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, made a decision to urgently send to the city of Bandar Abbas several special flights of the Emircom of Russia with experienced professionals to extinguish the fire in the port of Shahid Rajai. Despite difficult meteorological conditions and severe hurricane, our specialists made it to the place and started to extinguish the fire. Amphibious planes made several flights to drop water on the fire. Our diplomats facilitated Russian rescues in terms of coordination with Iranian colleagues. On April 27th, the President of Russia extended condolences to the leader and President of the Islamic Republic of Iran following this tragedy. Russia is going to help our friendly people of Iran, like it happened in the flood in the northern parts of the country in April 2019 and following a destructive earthquake in February 2023. On May the 7th marks the Day of Radio. That very day in 1985, during the meeting of the Russian Society for Physics and Chemistry, Russian inventor Alexander Popov presented the first radio that he created. It was a technology that changed the humanity for good. Since then, this date went down in history of world science as the day when the radio was born. Since it was then when the era of instant communication started. Russia contributed to it significantly. Radio became the basis for creation of navigation systems, mobile connection, wireless networks, and the internet. We cannot imagine our life without them. Also, in the 18th anniversary of the Great Victory, I'd like to say that it was this invention that the Soviet soldiers helped Soviet soldiers to maintain their morale. Do you remember the reports of the Soviet Information Bureau? Do you remember this? Attention, Moscow speaks. Back then, not only our country, but the whole world learned from these reports through radio how we fought Nazism, how our ancestors did it. The Third Reich even declared radio announcer Yuri Levitan as a personal enemy of Hitler. But the Kiev regime did the same thing. The presidential office declared journalists and Russian media personal enemies of Zelensky. And there was a list of the so-called peacekeeper. The radio, despite all the predictions of skeptics, withstood and proved that the true values endure. When the IT companies turn the internet into a tool of censorship, radio remains their oasis of freedom. It doesn't require subscriptions, doesn't block undesirable opinions, doesn't sell data of users. Some say that it is easy as truth itself, as accessible as the air. Radio continues to unite people where the democratic algorithms make walls. Today, Russian broadcasters, successors of Popov, have to face not only the technical challenges, but attempts to make man-made obstacles, who makes them the collective West, who verbally declare freedom of speech as the fundamental principle, cynically block Russian media, introduce sanctions against journalists, and outlaw them. I'm not even talking about the Neutrality website, where people are ticked off when they are killed. Just think about it. They prohibit the radio, the technology that survived 2 world wars. Isn't it a sign of moral bankruptcy of the so-called liberal model? They say that they fight against disinformation. In reality, they fight alternative opinions. When they block Sputnik on Voice of Russia, they don't protect people. They hide them into an information bunker, so they cannot hear how myths about infallibility of the Western policy are destroyed. But it is in vain. Even amid these conditions, our programs go through to the people. Do you know why? Because people feel that the Russian journalists speak the truth. At the same time, in the West, the free media resemble Rumber's factory on rubber stamping, fakes and lies. Journalists are thrown to prisons. Newsrooms are dismantled for their wrong questions or materials. For being objective, you can be left without not only career but even life. But why not? Because the Kiev regime killed a lot of journalists, and the West kept silence about it. Our radio, like 130 years ago, will continue broadcasting despite everything, because the air does not know boundaries, and the truth shouldn't be explained. I would like to congratulate all those involved in radio making with this holiday. I wish you achievements and success. This is a very difficult profession today. It's even a mission. And until we can hear voices in the speakers from Kamchatka to Kaliningrad, we're sure, no matter how hard our enemies try, all their technologies cannot block the truth and stop the course of history. Because history is written by those who, like Popov, look into future, not into the past. I congratulate you on the day of radio. May your air be clear, unlike the conscience of those who is afraid of it. One more announcement. On June. The event takes place in Kazan annually since 2016. It is organized by the Association of Young Diplomats and the government of the Republic of Tatarstan. Some 300 young diplomats participated in it. The main topic of this event is the diplomacy of victory, is dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory. A lot of representatives of the countries from the IOS countries will participate, and the discussion will concern the relevant topics. Sergei Lavrov sent his welcoming remarks to the participants. Meetings of young diplomats with the leadership of the Republic of Tatarstan are planned, as well as a football game between teams of young diplomats. And Rubin Football Club. We already talked about international SEO chess tournament. Two of them already took place this year. The second round was attended by 2,000 sportsmen from 68 countries, as well as representatives of more than 70 regions of Russia. All of them represented the national teams. The third round will take place in May in the hybrid format, so on May 11. The online events will take place. You have to be registered beforehand. The final round will take place in July 25th in Moscow. On June 5th and 6th, the Nizhny Novgorod is going to host a global digital forum. Representatives of state agencies, business, academic circles from 122 countries will participate in it. It is expected that the forum will bring together more than 1,500 foreign guests. The aim is to define ways to overcome the digital gap. We hope that the forum will be a convenient platform to share huge Russian experience in this sphere, including law application practices. The special attention will be given to interaction in this sphere, including the AI, higher digital literacy, identification of disinformation. The government experts are going to discuss the cooperation on the important negotiation platforms at the UN. I'm ready to take your questions. Is the international affairs with us? Yes, I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday to you too. You already touched upon this topic today. and it is very important and of principle in our opinion. How can you comment on the statement of Zelensky about possible terrorist attacks on May the 9th? It's the case when a comedian turned into an actor of global terrorist theater. His latest comments testify to the terrorist essence of the Kiev regime, including the attacks on their own population. They abuse the veterans of their own country. They try to denigrate the veterans in our country. He betrayed everyone, including his own people. He kneeled before them and promised to bring peace to Ukraine. He betrayed his own grandfather, a veteran. He betrayed nationality, his people, everyone, everywhere. He's prepared to make a bloodshed of Ukraine. So he is someone there and is paid for this. So he is invited to the get-togethers of the so-called civilized society. When he says that he cannot guarantee security because it's not his territory. It means that after every terror attack, after every killing of a civilian, the Kiev regime admits to responsibility for this. They turned the Crimean Bridge into a constant target, and they jeopardized a lot of people. Literally, there are people killed, and every time they said that they did it. That's why his threats are clearly of a terrorist character. Look at this. All of this involves the terrorist practices and neo-Nazi logics. They take down to anti-Nazis, to the heroes of World War II. Instead, they erect memorials to collaborationists. Now they even exhumated the bodies. So the Victory Day is not just another date when he can use his terrorist practices. It's his target. This is his aim. I don't know if he came up with it on his own or he was given instructions. Probably it's up to psychiatrists to decide. But it aligns with the common efforts of those who would like to cancel the outcomes of World War II and in the victory, when the USSR played a decisive role. This is the efforts of those who for many years want to exterminate the memory of those events. There were a lot of people who here in Russia who said that parades should not be taking place, that the uniform shouldn't be worn to do with those events, as a sign of respect to their own ancestors whose great-grandparents wore that uniform. All of this took place, but when they realized that they cannot achieve their goals, they made up another plan. They started to use the Kiev regime for this, for blackmailing, for threatening. But the Russian leadership already said that all those attempts are futile. Thank you very much. One more question.
The Russian media published information that Slovak President Chancellery was received around 400,000 signatures of Slovak citizens under a petition initiated by some political movements in favor of a referendum to withdraw the country from the regime of sanctions against Russia. How would you comment on this information? Yes, indeed, we took note of the statement of different political parties and society organizations in Slovakia regarding the start of collection of the signatures to conduct a referendum, which, according to the constitution of the Slovak Republic, could be declared by the head of the states. And 400,000 signatures for a country with a population of 5 million people is an important number. This is another reflection of the fact that there are more and more sane citizens in European countries and politicians and activists who understand not only the illegal character but the senseless character of the introduced restrictions against Russia, and the damage of the sanctions is clear to the population of Slovakia. It's not a secret to everyone, and they are getting their own statistics in the EU. This opinion should be listened to by the Western Europeans and other European authorities. Thank you very much. Is Sinhua with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Sinhua Xiaodin. I would like to congratulate in anticipation of the upcoming celebration day. I just wanted to ask two questions today. First question, the Chinese leader will be paying a state visit to Russia and will take part in the celebratory events in Moscow on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War, in the Great Patriotic War. What do you think? What is the significance for the further deepening of political respect, trust, friendship, and cooperation between the countries, and for keeping the results of the victory in the Second World War and the post-war world order, and the maintenance of international justice? This is my first question. The upcoming visit of the chairman of the PRC, Xi Jinping, in Russia will be one of the central events in the Russian-Chinese relations in this year for countries that borne the brunt of the fight during the Second World War against the German Nazism and the Japanese militarism. The preservation of memory and protection of historical justice is a solemn duty. Russia and China are of a single mind when it comes to defending the outcomes of the Second World War and laying in foundation of the post-war world order, and our countries are at the source of its formation. Moscow and Beijing, together with other states of their allies, joined the founding members of the UN, which is international legal expression of the new system of international relations that has been established as a result of war. That's why we, as well as our Chinese friends, being responsible participants of the world community, join in efforts in the protection of the priority of international law, preservation of the central role of the UN, and the respect of the foundational principles of its charter and the full interconnectedness. And we are countering the attempts of the collective West to twist the story of the Second World War and to downplay the role of our countries as victors, and they are trying to downplay our role and are trying to discredit the principles of the post-war world order, and are trying to impose the rules-based international order. In this context, the upcoming Russian-Chinese summit will send an important signal to the international community regarding the joint approaches of Russia and China regarding the protection of the post-war order and the countering attempts of the falsifying of history of the Second World War, revising the post-war architecture of international relations, where Russian Federation as a continuing state of the USSR and China too has both have a status of key guarantors of the world architecture. The negotiation will include a broad range of common questions, and we are preparing an important package of documents for signature regarding the cooperation on different avenues, and we are convinced that the outcomes of negotiations of President Putin with Chairman Xi will be serving to give another impulse to the complex development of the Russian-Chinese relations of mutual partnership and strategic interaction. Thank you. My second question is that this year we are celebrating the 80th anniversary of the founding of the UN. And being permanent members of the Security Council and foundational countries of the UN, in your opinion, should China and Russia cooperate on international multilateral platforms to ensure the correct direction in the global governance, and should we jointly promote the multipolarity of the world characterized by mutual respect and equal rights? I already partially answered this question, and I mentioned this on numerous occasions, that Russian President Putin mentioned that the Russian-Chinese relations have come to an unprecedentedly high level to reinforce global stability by the mere fact that they exist. These evaluations are extended to a bilateral cooperation in the multilateral format, especially at the UN, which is a multilateral platform in the mutually beneficial order, not intended to be used against third countries. Moscow and Beijing, bearing responsibility for the fate of humanity as countries part of the group of the founders of the UN, and as permanent members of the Security Council, defend a democratic and just polycentric world order based on the UN Charter and other norms of international law. We are convinced that the consideration of interests of all countries and the rejection of any claims to exclusivity, refusal of hegemonism and neocolonialism is a prerequisite for a stable and safe future. We see the UN as a unique, legitimate representative platform to elaborate collective responses to key challenges of modernity in the conditions of the upcoming multipolarity. We deem it necessary to have progressive efforts to restore the authority and the efficiency of the UN. We need to reinforce its central coordinating role in world affairs, and we have similar approaches when it comes to the reform of the UN. Our countries are expressing solidarity when it comes to most regional and thematic and local subjects in the UNGA and the UNSC. We prevent the imposition of unilateral narratives broadcast by a small group of countries, and those decisions should become a dominant idea to the detriment of the global majority, and they should be presented at the collective will of the world community. We continue our work to give draft resolutions a balanced character, which would take into account the priorities and aspirations of the global South countries and the overarching plot of Russian-Chinese contacts in this year is the topic of the victory over German Nazism and Japanese militarism. We point out that Beijing co-sponsored a resolution of the UNGA presupposing a special solemn session of the UNGA on May 7th. Together with our Chinese friends, we support attempts to preserve memory regarding the war, and we counter any attempts to rewrite history We want a correct understanding of causes and the results of the Second World War, one of the results of which has been the creation of the UN-centric system of international relations. We intend to continue our cooperation within the UN. We will counter any attempts to try to bring discord to the Russian-Chinese tandem, which is a guarantee for the harmonious coexistence of all countries and peoples, democratization of modern world order, and defense of the key national interests of our countries. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is the Media Corporation of China with us? If not, further is Reuters with us. Yes, good afternoon. Reuters is with you. We have two questions linked to the international agenda. The first question concerns Iran and its nuclear program. The U.S. President Donald Trump, in his interview to NBC News on May 4th, said that the nuclear program of Iran should be dismantled, with excluding the possibility of the use of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Did Washington discuss this with Moscow during the ongoing contacts between Russia and the United States, including on the Iranian nuclear program? And what does Russia think about this? Can Iran use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes or not? We don't just think or correct our position. This is a legal right of any state in the world which hasn't got access to nuclear weapons based on international law. I'm talking about the right of any state to explore and develop the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Why is that? It's because it has been enshrined in Article 4 of the NPT. In New York, we are currently seeing the third session of the Preparatory Committee on the Conference on the NPT, where there's particular attention paid to nuclear energy and the use of non-energy use of nuclear and radiation technologies. It's obvious that in the world we see an upheaval of interest in the use of the peaceful atom to resolve a whole range of tasks linked to sustainable development, to resolving a lot of different practical tasks that a community is faced with. Some countries need more energy, more than ever. And I use this energy in its primary sense. We need different energy sources, including nuclear, because it has a huge potential, and without such technologies, the big data collection and storage is impossible without the use of such amounts of energy. It's essential to counter the climate change also. It's difficult to find a person right now who wouldn't understand that the modern life requires powerful and reliable and, of course, ecologically sound sources of energy. Nuclear energy being one of them. I think it's clearly understood in Washington and Tehran too, and in other countries. I think everyone understands it, frankly. It's obvious. We're talking about digitalization and AI and digitalization of everything, the economy, the state services, logistics. All this requires a completely new level of energy use and quantitative and qualitative breakthrough when it comes to energy supply. So excluding a country, particularly Iran, from this area is nonsensical. And this question is, the whole premise of the question is nonsensical. There is no legal prerequisite for this issue. And we've been working with Iran for many years, and we intend to continue to work with Tehran. And I would like to highlight the fact that it is going in full conformity with the requirements of the NPT, and we are supported by the all verification measures on the part of the IAEA, the Iran is currently the most verified state when it comes to IAEA. They have special agreements with the IAEA and according to the NPT. And the position of the US administration was that Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons, and we understand that. And in that direction, probably this issue is probably the subject of discussions when it comes to the indirect dialogue between Iran and the United States. We point out the heightened dynamics of this context, which testifies to the desire of both countries to achieve a result. And taking into account that all parties are pragmatic and should consider the balance of interests, perhaps they could reach an agreement. And attempts to ensure settlement around the Iranian nuclear program by other means, including discriminatory approaches and moreover the use of threat of force, are counterproductive and could lead only to a further escalation of tensions, and we shouldn't allow for that. Thank you. And my second question concerns the crisis and the border between India and Pakistan. Recently, India has closed another dam that supplied water to Pakistan. Pakistan tested a new ballistic missile in the wake of this. Escalation has been growing, and in that regard, what are the steps taken by Russia to de-escalate tensions between the two countries, and what is your evaluation of the situation? We are worried about the escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan following the terrorist attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd. Russia is a consequent supporter of normalization of relations between two countries that are friendly to us. We hope that the current disagreements will be settled by political diplomatic means on bilateral basis, and we hope that the concerned states will not allow for a new aggravation tension in the region. We maintain direct contact with the Indian and Pakistani partners and also through foreign policy agencies. Thank you very much. Is Anadolu with us? Yes, good afternoon. Anadolu Agency. How would you comment on the rare earth metals deal between Ukraine and the United States? Would this influence the settlement of the conflict of Ukraine? And does Russia and the United States hold negotiations on a joint exploitation of rare earth minerals? And it's impossible to see comments even on the part of Ukrainian authorities because they haven't read it. They don't understand what has been written in it. I would build my response to your question on the basis of two parts. If we talk about exact comments, they are impossible right now because no one saw this text. Moreover, there's been a lot of conflicting sources and conflicting information. We see each day we have more questions. Allegedly, 3 documents were signed in Washington, not 1, and the texts have not been published. And those 3 documents have classified addendums. How could we comment on something that no one knows about, barring those who were present at the table of negotiations in Washington? On the 8th of May, that's the most surprising story, that this package will be brought to be ratified by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Perhaps the deputies, the MPs, will be lucky to at least catch a glimpse of this document before being forced to press the buttons. Everyone is in anticipation. That's the kind of democracy that we are witnessing. I haven't seen anything like that ever. If you could give me any example where a parliament was offered to vote for something they haven't seen, I would be thankful to you. Perhaps there was one time in history, and after that one time, there's been a Russian statement, a cat in a bag. But there is a second part of response to your question. This all, if we don't delve into details, follows the common vein that we are seeing a colonization of Ukraine by the Western countries.
Classical scheme, imperialist scheme, when metropolitan countries pull out of their colonies, steal resources, is implemented today. The states in modern world can be divided, I think, into three groups. The first one, those who, according to previous times, want to continue being colonize, being neo-colonizers. Those second group, those who resist that, they have such possibilities. And the third one is the countries that do not resist that. Here there are two subgroups. A, those who do not have possibility to resist. And the second subgroup, those who do not want to resist because they have been paid for that. I think in the last group, and the second subgroup, it's the Kiev regime. It wants to be personally allocated the money for giving away natural resources that belong to the entire Ukrainian people, historically must belong to them. So here in that way, it's all obvious and clear. They have all sold their resources, they're selling their people for organs, and the legislation has been developed and adopted by himself, by Zelensky in Ukraine. Now they have reached this category of natural resources. Thank you. If you have no more question, I would like to precise, is China Media Corporation with us? Yes, hello.
Я вас слушаю.
Yes, I can hear you. And my first
I hear.
President Xi's presence at the May 9th celebration highlights the strength of China-Russia ties. How would you assess the current state of the bilateral relationship?
Ну, я сегодня много на эту тему говорила, я готова кратко повторить. Мы благодарны представителю КНР Си Цзиньпину за готовность в святой для нас день быть вместе с...
So I have already mentioned this. I would like to repeat. Xi Jinping is about to visit Moscow and participate in the festivities. It's unique mutual trust and support that is present in the relations I have mentioned today, and our countries regard each other as priority partners and are ready to protect each other's basic interests, sovereignty, territorial integrity, security, and national development. The strategic partnership between Russia and China is of a comprehensive nature and is always enriched by the new constructive substance, and is in accordance with the key interests of our peoples and supported by them totally. The multifaceted cooperation between Moscow and Beijing is to continue to develop despite the turbulent international situation and attempts by external players to harm our friendship and good neighborly relations.
Regional and global issues through platforms such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRIC as well.
Мы плотно взаимодействуем на международном...
We closely interact on international platforms, in international sphere, in international organizations and forums. We support equality, justice, and promote the construction of a just multipolar world order With the decisive role of the United Nations organizations, we count the Westerners who are trying to impose the confrontational agenda to the entire world, including the Asian issues. Against this background, the strategic cooperation between Moscow and Beijing plays a key role in the stability of global processes and global governments. We believe that the vitality of the multipolar model depends on taking into account the interests of everyone, of all the countries, without exclusion and on a non-discriminatory basis. We think it's important to promote such human values as peaceful development, equality, democracy, freedom. These are the achievements of humankind and yields constructive, positive results for peoples, for their development and prosperity. Thank you. Is Varel with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. I congratulate you on the coming holiday. Yes, I congratulate you too. Madam Zakharova, 2 questions. The first one is about the victory parade and the visit by the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Do you have the information? Will he attend for sure? And the participation of Armenian servicemen in the parade, will they be represented somehow? Yes, I think it's a known fact that Nikol Pashinyan, together with other CIS leaders, has been invited to attend the festivities, and as you understand, he plans to come, he has planned to come. But in order to confirm this information, you need to address the Russian President Press Service and, of course, the Armenian side. As for the participation of servicemen, of military personnel, was that your question? Yes. In general, there is participation of different servicemen from different countries that is planned, but for clarification, you need to address the Ministry of Defense, because they are responsible for the preparation of the parade. Madam Zakharova, and the second question, it's about 2 cases. One of that, maybe you know, in one of the capital districts of Yerevan, there was an incident. One person who represents a pro-Western party, he said there was a provocation against him by a Russian embassy for visiting Bucha last year. And the second one, at Alain Semanyan, at a meeting, he made negative statements against Russia. Actually, you have mentioned this, but it's difficult for me just to imagine. In some district, city district of Armenia, there was some unrest where the Russian embassy was allegedly active. It's just hard for me to imagine how that could happen. I have a question for you in turn. Those who were trying somehow to link Russia to this issue, do they have some facts? How the Russian embassy, in their opinion, in this city district, how could the Russian embassy manifest itself? Just Biden and Clinton, they just have invented a story about Russian hackers who disturbed them, but then it turned out it was not true. Then someone invented a story about Novichok poison. So how technically could that happen, according to those who have started to accuse Russian embassy of that unrest or some problems, as you have mentioned? It's just interesting. It's really interesting for me. I have heard many cases. This case, actually, I hear for the first time about this city district, but I would like just to know. I have not studied this issue in detail, just general information. I think it's just an attempt to resolve the domestic issues with the use of some foreign policy facts. The issue with Russia is actually hot, and why not to speculate with that in order to attract your competitors with some interesting perspective ideas? I think here you should look for the response. I would repeat, we have heard so many things from different countries on our alleged interference. We do not interfere, and there are no such cases. Do not interfere in some elections in sovereign countries. What they have tried to accuse us of, to offend us, it has turned out to be fakes, misinformation, lies in domestic policy or in order to justify their foreign policy actions. It does not facilitate the relations and the foreign policy situation. So I just do not want to study that in detail. Actually, those Brussels methodology are starting to be implemented on the territory of Armenia. It's just painfully familiar, so familiar, and I have cited some examples for you. And it is sad for us, the statements by Alan Simonyan. He has come back to those anti-Russian statements. There are no connections here with the image of the parliament speaker, all those offenses, attacks. Really, thank you. Thank you. As a press secretary, I am saying that. Is Izvestia with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. We congratulate you on the coming holiday. We congratulate you too. We have one question. Reuters has mentioned the possibility to transfer to Ukraine additional Patriot air defense system, and potential suppliers can be Israel, US, and Greece. What could be the reaction of Moscow with regard to the supplies of weapons to Kiev, and how can that influence the further conflict, those supplies of air defense systems to Ukraine? Whether that is confirmed or not, we will come back to those media materials, but in any case, further supplies of weapons to the Kiev regime, it puts obstacles to the settlements and further escalates the situation. They're just killing the Ukrainian citizens with those supplies. I think everyone in all the capitals understands that. According to media reports, they have some official statements. In some cases, it has not been officially confirmed, but we hope that in all the capitals they understand that where those plans are considered or analyzed, also in Washington, that according to its highest representatives just continues to seek some peaceful solution to the crisis. Among the potential donors are Israel, Greece, the US, Germany. If it is the truth, the Israeli stance is shocking because they are supplying weapons to a neo-Nazi regime, the regime under the banners of Bandera and Shukhevich, who have directly participated in the Holocaust. So who are they supporting? Those neo-Nazi defendants, or they either combat the Holocaust or they support the neo-Nazi regime, because the Kiev regime, it openly supports the neo-Nazi collaborators. Just have a look how our common memory of the great victory is treated in Israel by the Israeli citizens. The Israeli parliament has adopted the relevant legislation on honoring these memorable dates, on honoring the memory. It's just a contradiction. So supporting someone who is associated with Bandera, Shukhevich, and those who have committed the actions of Holocaust. Actually, the Israeli embassy has not replied to those statements, and for Zelensky regime, it's just another way of begging of more weapons and of including air defense systems. He used to demand them, then he went on to blackmail. And now he has been, in a way, just received some statements from White House chief, and he was deprived of this opportunity to buy some Patriot complexes. We have the data that 186 such systems are used in the world. For the US, it's about 1/3. The rest are in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. In Europe, there are 40 such complexes, and Germany and Greece, 15 such air defense systems. It's just passing this burden of expenses to Western Europe. And now those who supply those weapons, they just facilitate the actions of the Nazi Kiev regime. Now the statements I have quoted today, that they do not guarantee the security of the parade on Red Square, and possible strikes against civilian population, I have quoted today directly, that they confirm such a possibility, targeted strikes against civilians. Now, threats against Margarita Simonyan and yesterday against me of physical violence, not from some marginal figures, but officials. Yes, they are somehow officials on the territory of Ukraine. Yes, those who supply weapons to the Kiev regime, they just need to understand they just sponsor the neo-Nazis and ship weapons to them. How is that all linked? And the statements made by those countries on fighting terrorism, inadmissibility of international terrorism, countering racism, and so on. They just need to be aware. They just do not just support the Kiev regime that is not democratic, that is illegitimate, but they support terrorists with Nazi ideology. Thank you very much. Is News. Are you with us?
Newsroom, are you with us? No? Then the Moscow Post, are you with us? Good afternoon. We congratulate you with this great holiday. We have one question for you. The Federal Agency on the Preservation of Constitution of Germany decided to recognize the Alternative for Germany party as the far-right extremist organization. How can you comment on this? It's not the first time when they do that. They have rich experience in this. It is with the prohibition of political parties that the Nazis started their path to power in 1923. They prohibited other public organizations that played a significant role in the political life of the country. It was only the beginning. After that, as you remember, there were bans on professions, and later they went to faith, nationalities, then they started to physically separate people, then they started to put people into to use them as a labor force. This happened in the history of Germany, and it was enshrined in law back then. At the current stage, Germany didn't come to such ends, but they shouldn't repeat the mistakes that cost a lot to Germany and the world. As we see, this trend is alive in Germany. Traditionally, we don't comment on the internal political agenda. We do not interfere in internal affairs of third countries. We don't comment publicly the political processes. But the point is that they try to connect it to Russia. They usually in their internal affairs refer to Russia, to our country. What is also surprising, there is a special agency that is aimed to protect the democracy and constitution. And they want to prohibit the party that almost 30% of the population in Germany vote for. It's an interesting story. If they prohibit this party, what do they do with the people, with the 1/3 population of the country? Are they going to ban them, to cross them out, to expel them? And this agency questions the legitimacy of local voters and their rights for their own point of view. They have to explain this and work this thing out. I would like to draw attention to the fact that these things shocked a lot of people abroad as well. And what happened today with Mr. Metz is probably not a coincidence. All this political and global brought Russia to the current stage in politics, in economy, in the humanitarian sphere. What aligns with the national interests of the Germans, and what is solely serves the interests of external elites and groups. There is a demand for an honest discussion, not political questions. Is author E with us? Good afternoon, Maria Zakharova. I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday, the Victory Day. I would like to talk about the Baltic states. Every time we look at the news, and you cannot what to expect after that. Recently, President of Lithuania signed a law stripping Russians of their residence permit. Probably they are going to fight with Russia. Estonia wants to take down the Russian military ships. What's going on with all those republics in general? You know, if I may, I'll add up to my answer to your Armenian colleague. I would like to refer to the briefing of Mr. Ushakov. He said that the Red Square will see the marching of people from many countries. Now, as to your question, you mean the agreement between Russia and Thailand? No. It's another question. We'll go back to it. Oh, the Baltic states. What's going on with it? What's going on with these small countries? You have several questions. This cannot surprise anyone. The state policy of the Baltic states, unfortunately, is not based not on Russophobia, but they have a practical plan on how to make the life of their own citizens even more difficult and sometimes even unbearable, because natural partner, neighbor, an economic cooperator, I don't know, is Russia. It includes border cooperation, historic ties, joint production. It started several decades ago. All of this should be destroyed and trampled upon. What are they going to do after that? They want only through subsidies from the EU. Do the subsidies go for the development, to education in the Baltic states? Of course not. This only help keep this democracy afloat, and it ensures the instructions from the EU and pursues a Russophobic policy. Have you heard anything about scientific achievements in these countries? About breakthroughs in agriculture, in the cultural life, in fishing? Have you heard anything? Probably you're going to tell me about exploration of outer space and other galaxies. What do these countries give to themselves and to the world community besides Russophobe poison? Nothing, but everything is done to. They are paid for Russophobia, and they hide from their own citizens the fact that they are not developing. Unfortunately, we see that the hostility of these pre-Baltic states only ramps up. Lithuania, Estonia, other countries, because of their historic role, can do little. In reality, the states aspire to make life for the Russian-speaking citizens more difficult. They discriminate and violate human rights. It's normal for Vilnius, for Riga, for Tallinn. Now they even start talking about saber rattling. They started to use the language of war. But who's doing that? The Baltic states. I'll tell you one more time. Does it have any achievements besides NATO exercises? Did they achieve anything in the military art? Probably they settled some terrorist problem. Probably they became peacekeepers, or with their bodies they settled disputes in any country. Did they show themselves positively as a nation? Probably there was a peacekeeping operation. What did they do? What are they proud of? What's the basis for such an aggressive narratives? It's either the complex of inferiority or something like that, because those who cannot do certain steps are mostly aggressive. They only call names somebody else, they try to degrade others. Or probably it's the only chance for them, for their political establishment, to increase their rating. Probably it's just a narrative that they're paid for it. It's the way of the economic development. Thank you. Question 2. You're absolutely correct. It's about Thailand. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, introduced to be ratified an agreement between the Russian Federation and Thailand. Now, all the criminals who are wanted by the law enforcement of the both countries can be extradited. It's good news. Are there any plans to sign similar documents with other countries? We indeed work and strengthening on this track with other countries. Such agreements are an important element of the international anti-criminal cooperation. Over the recent years, more than 20 similar documents were signed. For now, the Ministry of Justice has negotiations with a number of countries, including Nicaragua, Mozambique, Mauritania, Djibouti, and Mauritius. Thank you. I'd like to tell you one more time that this is the competence of the Ministry of Justice, together with other interested parties, but the leading role belongs to Ministry of Justice. Thanks to you. Is a newsroom with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. News.ru. We welcome you and congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. Thanks to you. Question 1. The EU said that it's going to increase the support to Ukraine if the US and Russia don't negotiate the settlement of the conflict. The European Commissar on Defense said that he didn't rule out the possibility that the cost of this support will go to 40 billion euros from the current to 80 billion euros. Are these plans realistic? We know who are bad guys there. It's Ursula von der Leyen. Probably this representative has another role. It's not the role of a good policeman. It's some kind of hybrid. Probably that's how we should treat this. Look at facts. Facts say that they haven't refused the idea. Their previous strategy, they have hatred against Russia, anti-Russian rhetoric, as they say, to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, and they use this idea. There's active attempts of European officials to make up coalitions on new forms of, to support the Kiev regime. Probably it's a new tactics, because on the example of these facts, we should draw conclusions about the approach of the officials in Brussels. Of course, it's another responsible statement. What they are going to implement out of all this thing, I don't want even to comment on this. We understand and we see that recently the pumping the Ukrainian regime with the European armaments is not supported the way it used to. Not because of their relations with the US, but because people in the EU countries started to ask questions. They started to vote started to demand explanations why they live the way they do and not the way they were promised, why they have to sponsor this bloodshed, why they have to send their money to support a crazy person. The situation in Washington did influence the stance of the Western Europe, but not in the way that European Commissar Kubilis says. Because they became terrified a little that they can be left alone, one-on-one with the problem that the previous U.S. administration created. They realized that they have to be honest with their own population, not to come up with some new explanations. Question 2 that we have, it's about Armenia. The Speaker of the Armenian Parliament, Alen Simonyan, accused Moscow in a hybrid war. He talked about the internal political situation, said that huge money from the outside are spent there. He agreed that it's from Russia. According to him, the participants of the hybrid war from Russia tried to change the power in Armenia. The statement was made right after he received the ambassador of Russia, Sergei Kopyrkin. How can I comment on this? Well, already commented on it that it's another round of aggressive narratives. We are confused. What kind of hybrid war against the leadership of Armenia we can talk about if Armenia is going to be represented during the Victory Day events? There is constant contact at the highest level. We are talking only about cooperation and interaction. The speaker that you mentioned probably says something else. Probably he has to work out the common position on this. I cannot imagine a situation when his words on somebody else's behest or on his own could be true. Can someone give any kind of facts? It's impossible. It's Western guidelines from Brussels. Thanks to you, and thanks to you. Are there any more questions? If there are none, then I say goodbye to you until the next time. And one more time, I congratulate you with the upcoming holidays, with the great the Day of Victory.